Ajay?
So again, like as I was saying, AI is probably stealing all the audience, okay, and that is the buzzword. That's where the entire industry is, and even the education community is really focusing on. But to run those AI models, okay, or to run all of your AI application, we really need like a platform which is highly agile, okay, and can cater to all of those payloads, right? Which is where we are going to talk about a modern virtualization platform. Okay, why virtualization? We'll see that in a moment. Okay, but my name is Ajay Desai. I work as a specialist solutions architect for Red Hat. Okay, and if you can go to the next slide.
Yeah. And also, I am Rahul Damle. I also work as a specialist solution architect with Red Hat, specializing in OpenShift Virtualization and OpenShift AI.
So in this session, we are just going to talk about, first of all, why virtualization, okay? What is it, or rather, how is it that we can achieve virtualization using like a modern platform in the form of OpenShift, okay? And then we are going to cover like, how is it that, virtualization is actually achieved, okay, using not just OpenShift as a platform, but all other latest technologies, right? So as platforms are moving, okay, the peripheral technologies, be it like storage, be it like networks, they are coming up with newer and advanced technologies to cater to the modern workload as well, okay, in the form of like AIs. So we are going to cover that as well, and a few success stories if we get time, and followed by a demo, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. So why virtualization in the first place, right? So the entire industry, everyone is talking about containerization, right? But this is the fact, okay? A lot of workload, a lot of applications are still running on VMs, okay? Containerization is picking up, but VMs is where the actual application or the workload is still running, and that's why virtualization is important, in the industry, and it will persist so for further more years to come. Okay, if you can go to the next slide. Okay, so legacy virtualization, right? The traditional virtual stack. Okay, I hope we all know about virtualization. What exactly is virtualization and why virtualization? I'm sure people from Red Hat or the industry know, but I guess you are probably students, right? You are not as well. Okay, so okay, probably uh, okay. So again, like coming back to the slide. Okay, so legacy virtualization or traditional virtualization, people or customers want to move away from that because of the difficulties that they are facing, right? Be it like slow evolution, be it like the increasing cost, okay? So they are required to maintain like, bulky systems to be able to run like VMware solutions or, virtualization solutions in their company, okay? The industry is moving towards a more agile kind of, framework or infrastructure, right? Okay, just imagine when tomorrow the AI is actually going to start hitting our industry, right? What's going to happen? You need an infrastructure which is able to cater to all of those requirements, right? Which is where we talk about, infrastructure modernization. All right. And lastly, the target being, to be able to achieve um, faster development, faster time to market, right? Which is where we talk about all of these different, methodologies in the form of DevOps. Okay. At the same time, automation. All right. So just to give you a background, what is the Red Hat approach on virtualization? Okay. In 2007 came a concept called as KVM. okay, which is like kernel-based virtualization or kernel-based VMs. Okay. What they did was, so in short, to run a virtual machine, what do you require? Is a hypervisor, right? KVM provide that hypervisor. Okay. What is a hypervisor? Hypervisor is just a small piece of code which is actually talking to the adapters or the hardware on your machines, okay, and running two different OSs, okay, on that same hardware, right? That is what is virtualization in short, right? So KVM was one such technology that helped run OS or multiple OS on a single piece of hardware, right? Red Hat saw the potential, okay, and acquired this company called as Kumranet, okay, in 2008. All right. Later on, Red Hat, came up with something called as OpenStack, right, which was a technology which provided virtualization using KVM as the base, as the basis. All right. In 2012, okay, OpenShift came along. Okay, the first version of OpenShift when even Kubernetes was not like GA in the market. Okay. 2015 saw the first OpenShift which was based on Kubernetes. Okay. In 2016, Red Hat came up with something called as KubeVirt. Okay. So what exactly is Kubernetes? Kubernetes is a platform or a technology, okay, which works on the basis of APIs, right? When you fire a kubectl command, what happens is that kubectl command is actually hitting the API server, issuing those commands to the local node kubelet, okay, and provisioning different artifacts within the Kubernetes, structure as such, okay, or the Kubernetes architecture for you, right? The same technology, if it can be applied to virtual machines, so that we can create virtual machines, okay, instead of containers on those same nodes, is what KubeVirt is actually doing here, okay. And that's how KubeVirt started picking up, and Red Hat introduced KubeVirt as part of the OpenShift platform using the Kubernetes concept to be able to create virtualization, hence KubeVirt really, okay. And the technology using which we are now able to create virtual machines or run VMs on a platform like Kubernetes, which is Red Hat OpenShift, okay. And in 2020 came the first capability in the form of OpenShift 4.5, okay, where we are able to run virtual machines using KubeVirt, okay. That followed, KubeVirt eventually became like a technology which was adopted highly by the open source system, okay, or the open community. It is one of the top 10, if I'm not wrong, top 10 CNCF projects, okay. Multiple companies, including the likes of Google, are investing or contributing to this project, okay. And it is highly established, highly successful, okay, and we are seeing the results in the industry as well. How? A company called NVIDIA, right? NVIDIA GeForce is like an online company, okay, which runs their online gaming platform using KubeVirt, okay. So you can imagine, a gaming platform which requires like, microsecond of latency, okay, multiple and millions of like users logging onto that platform, using that platform at the same time. Such a platform is being supported by the KubeVirt technology, okay, and that's why we say that KubeVirt is something that is highly established in the market, right? Yeah, I think with that I'll just hand over to Rahul.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Ajay. And to navigate.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So before we talk about the product OpenShift virtualization, right? I'll just take a step back, talk about some basics, right? So, but before I go, how many of you, just a show of hands, have used or know about OpenShift? Yeah, right. So pretty much everyone, right? And how many of you have used OpenShift virtualization? Okay, all right. And in what sense you are using? Are you creating the VMs at customer end for yourself, or how is that? Internal use? Okay, all right, right. So you are aware that we started with the bare metal deployments, right? And then came the virtualization, right? So we have, like, in the infrastructure, you put the OS hypervisor and then create the VMs, right? So those are heavyweight virtual machines. Then came the era of containers, right? Now, containers are not virtual machines, as you see, right? So what are containers? They are process isolation. So in terms of Linux, they are just the process isolation, right? So it's a process at the Linux level, correct? And those are lightweight. So what all you need, your applications, your tools, your libraries, everything is packaged within a container, right? So containers is what we are, deploying nowadays, right? But as Ajay mentioned, VM still exists, right? Now, how do we manage the VMs, correct? Next slide, please. Right? So, the important point is VMs we can put inside the containers, right? Why we can put that inside a container, right? Now, for a KVM, for a Linux, a virtual machine is a process as well, right? A virtual machine running in a KVM hypervisor, it's a process, correct? And containers, as we saw, it encapsulates process, right? So since both are process, we can manage in a similar way a virtual machine and a container, right? Now, this has evolved such that a virtual machine is created within a container itself because both are processes, right? And that's the premise of what we're going to see next, right? Next slide, please. Right. So OpenShift virtualization, it's a unified platform, right? As you might have been using. It's a unified platform to run both your container workload and your virtual machines, right? Because of the same premise that we saw, both are like a process to a Linux, right? So it's a unified platform, and OpenShift, it's an included feature of OpenShift, right? You don't need to, have a different add-on to that. It's an included feature of OpenShift, right? And not just the RHEL VMs, we can also create other flavors of virtual machines, right? Like Windows VMs as well as we can create, right? And it is based on KVM, and it is proven for its performance and stability, right? So that's the OpenShift virtualization for us. Right now, are you aware of this OVE, OKE, OCP? Any idea, any guess? Right? So what are these terms here? Anyone to? Yeah. So that's the new, product that we introduced. It's just a different variants of the virtualization, correct? Right? So, and what's the hypervisor we are using? The hypervisor we are using is the KVM, right? Now, KVM as a hypervisor is embedded as part of the CoreOS operating system, right? So it's not like when you are using OpenShift virtualization, you need to create another hypervisor. It's not like that. It's part and parcel of your CoreOS operating system. Yep. All right. Next slide, please. Okay. All right. So in the previous slide, I talked about unified platform, right? Like one platform to manage both. Why? Because we had one separate platform just to manage the virtual machines, right? And then came a platform just to manage the containers, right? Now OpenShift, using the OpenShift, we are able to manage both your virtual machines and containers side by side on the same unified platform. Yep. All right, next slide. Right, OVE, are you using OVE? Not yet. What's the difference between OVE? OCP you are using, right? The OpenShift you are using, you are creating the VMs on the OpenShift, right? Now OVE is like recently introduced only to run the virtual machines, right? It's a very, very cost-effective way only to run your virtual machines, right? So if you want to run the containers, OVE is not for you, right? OVE will only help us to run in a very cost-effective way only the virtual machines, right? Now, if you want to run both containers and virtual machines, there are other flavors like OpenShift Kubernetes engine and OpenShift container platform, right? What we just saw, correct? So those are the two different variants. So just remember, only VMs, we can use the OV in a very cost-effective way, right? All right, next slide, please. All right, now how do we create the virtual machines, right? Of course, you can create it from scratch as a greenfield, right? On the OpenShift, there is one way, we create it from the scratch, that's it, right? But customers have a lot of virtual machines running on their different hypervisors, right? So there is another way to migrate those virtual machines from the source hypervisor onto the OpenShift virtualization, right? So how do we migrate? There is a tool that we provide, the MTV, Migration Toolkit, right? It's going to migrate your VMs at scale from the different hypervisors like RHV, Red Hat Virtualization, VMware, OpenStack. So any virtual machines running there, it's going to migrate and move it onto the OpenShift virtualization, right? And that it is able to do at scale, right? So MTV, again, it's an included feature of OpenShift, operator-based. You just install and create a plan, mention what all VMs I need to migrate, and it's going to migrate it for us, right? All right, so that's the MTV. Next slide, please. All right, Ansible, anyone using Ansible or heard of Ansible? Yeah. So we use it, it's an automation platform, right? Now, we can also tie it up with the OpenShift virtualization, correct? So these are some of the use cases where we can, migrate, deploy, provision the VMs, do the day two operations, patch the VMs, do the patching, the security audits, deploy some applications, right? Make the configuration changes. It ties very well with OpenShift virtualization, right? So Ansible and OpenShift virtualization can go hand in hand for your day two operations, right? These are some of the use cases. Also, when you want to deprovision, remove the VMs, right? Ansible can be used to automate all those stuff. All right. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay. All right. What is this? Any guesses? What are we measuring here? Metrics, right? So we need to know how my VMs are behaving, correct? Now that's the observability part, correct? Now VMs can be spread. Don't have like one cluster, just manage 10, 5 VMs, right? We are talking about thousands of virtual machines spread across the cluster. So we need a way to monitor it from a single point or single pane of glass, right? So from a single place, we can monitor all these VMs spread across different clusters, right? And that's where the ACM tools comes handy, right? Now these are some of the dashboards that you see, right? And it's not just one cluster it is managing, it is observing. There are multiple clusters, thousands of VMs, all from a single place. We can manage those VMs, right? So that's the ACM, Advanced Cluster Management for Virtualization, which creates the dashboards and all the metrics we can measure. Yeah. Next slide, please. Right. You want to take this? Partner ecosystem? Yeah. Now, OpenShift virtualization is part of OpenShift, right? But along with that, we also require storage, right? What we need is we have certified partners which helps us to provide all these ancillary services, right? So storage, the underlying storage our platform requires. So we have some certified partners in terms of NetApp, HPE, IBM Fusion, right? They will provide all the required underlying storage for the VMs and for the OpenShift, right? Now, another important factor for the enterprise is backup and DR, right? So, multiple clusters, multiple VMs, we need to have, a good backup and DR policy setup, right? Because, some are mandated to have the DR setup, right? So, the way we set up the backup and DR for containers, it's a bit different for the virtual machines, right? So now we also have some certified partners which will set up your backup and DR, right? Now this is not the exhaustive list. More partners are being added on day-to-day basis, right? So we have NetApp, Trilio, Portworx. They will provide the backup and DR solutions for all your VMs, right? Now why I said it requires some specific things, because one virtual machine has, it's not just one container I need to back up and replicate it on the DR side, right? There's a lot of metadata, the VM itself, and the number of disks, right? Like one VM can have 5 disks, 10 disks, right? So the entire thing, it has to be backed up, and when it restores, it has to know which disk is part of which VM, right? So for that, it's a specific task to do that, which is being done by our certified partners, right? So again, not just the bare metal on-premise you can use, you can also use the bare metals on the cloud providers like AWS, OCI and GCP are also on works now, right? So a big certified partner ecosystem that will augment the OpenShift virtualization features. Yep, next slide please. Okay, all right. Do we have time for demo and QA? How much time we have? 8 minutes, perfect. You want to see the demo or just move on to the QA? Demo is fine? How is it visible? Visible, right? Okay. Right, so that's my OpenShift web console, right? And I'm in the virtualization overview, correct? So now, what I want to do, I have 3 virtual machines already running, right? So that's the overview, what are my top consumers. So these are my top consumers. So let's create a virtual machine very quickly, correct? I'll go to the virtual machines tab. Again, this virtualization field is enabled after I have installed the operator, right? So Operator Hub is our Play Store or App Store. You want to download any particular app, you go to Operator Hub, click the operator, and it's ready for us to use, right? So after I have the virtualization operator installed, I get all these fields to create and manage my VMs, right? You want me to zoom or it's clear? Okay. Right, as you can see, I have 3 virtual machines created here, right? So let's create virtual machines. How many click do you guess we can create a virtual machine? In how many clicks? 5? 1? No, not 1. We have to navigate 2. All right, let's see. Right, so I'll go to template. Right, these are some out-of-the-box template, as you are aware. And we can also create our own template. You know, enterprise can define our own template as well, right? So let's see, I want to create a RHEL 9 VM, okay? So click number 1, right? I don't want to customize, just go with what my template provides, right? So 1 CPU, 2 GB memory, good enough for my demo, 30 GB of size, and that's my VM name here, right? So that was the first click, and now this is the second click, quick create virtual machine. Right? Now, in 2 clicks, my VM is getting created now, right? So it's getting provisioned, whatever configuration we had, and in matter of seconds, we'll get the VM running, right? Correct. So once this is running, we'll be able to log into that virtual machine. So let's see. Let's go to a running VM for a demo purpose. Yeah, no, say it's come in the running state, right? So in 15-20 seconds, I just created this VM and it's in the running state now, right? So those are the different features. I can configure the VM if I want to increase the CPU, memory, attach the disk, schedule it on some specific servers, right? All that I can do, right? How can I log in? I can log in to the console, and this is still booting the VM, and yeah, it's ready for me to log in, right? So as simple as that, we just created the virtual machine, and start using it, right? All right. Right. What else we do on day-to-day activities, right? On day-to operations, right? We have multiple ways, right? We stop the VM, live migrate, right? What's the live migration, right? Now, live migration is if something happens to my worker node, right, or the server where my VM is running, correct? OpenShift will live migrate my virtual machine onto different node, right, without any downtime. That's the live migration. So platform can trigger it for us, or we can trigger it manually as well, right? So live migration, we can clone the virtual machine, take the snapshot and backup, correct? So on and so forth, right? So these are all the multiple features that's available for us to work with the virtual machines. Yeah. Any questions so far? Yeah.
Machine, like Windows.
Windows is there. So Windows 2012, 2019.
Own flavor of operating system if there is any.
So CentOS, Ubuntu, they will also run, right? But not under the supported configs. It will run. Windows is supported, so we are part of Microsoft SVVP program, Server Virtualization Validation Program. So as part of that partnership, it's supported by Microsoft as well. So it's a joint support with Microsoft.
How is the customer adaptability is coming on? Means those who are using VMware, how they are adapting to.
You know the story.
If you are
Yeah,
able to comment.
you know the story, right? So we are seeing a lot of traction on this field, right? So they are big customers. One customer has migrated around 40,000 VMs. A big payments customer. There's a lot of customer stories. You have any handy?
Yeah, in fact, if you look at it from a global perspective, there are like multiple customers that are approaching, not just Red Hat, but other companies as well, right? Seeking an alternate virtualization solution. Okay. Likewise, we are being approached as well. We are taking this story. A lot of customers are already running their workload on OpenShift virtualization. Okay. We have some Indian customers as well, though they are not referenceable. Okay. And we are working with the big banks and FSI customers as well as on today to get their workload onto OpenShift virtualization. Okay. From a roadmap perspective, okay, Red Hat is very actively investing into this area to get all of those modern technologies, okay, be it like storage, be it like your fiber channels, be it like your iSCSI, kind of storage, okay, a single platform, where just imagine, you have an application which requires, very high or very efficient underlying storage in the form of fiber channel. At the same time, that same application can require, for its archival, a regular storage. All of these things getting attached on the same platform, okay, onto your VM or onto your application, okay. How all of that is getting achieved is through a platform like OpenShift, right? So all of those investment is where Red Hat is heading with, okay, making those technologies available. As I said in the beginning, okay, how AI is going to shape the industry, no one knows, right? But we need the underlying infrastructure in the form of a modern platform that can actually work in an agile way to cater to those workloads, right? Is the vision that Red Hat is holding and working in that direction. Sorry, you had a question.
Yeah, Ajay, I have a question to you. It's regarding, is it a common pattern, right? Like as you mentioned at the start of your talk, right, that people don't always containerize their application in some cases because they need to run the virtual machine workload also, right? That's where the VM is in picture. But my question is like, if an organization want to achieve kind of isolation between their teams workload, because typical organization might have different teams, right, and they are all aligned to a different LOBs and all. So in that case, my question is it the correct pattern and people are doing that they have a virtual machine workload running inside the OpenShift, and on that virtual machines they are creating a Kubernetes cluster out of it. So like you can think of that in nested uh, cluster, like OpenShift is running inside the OpenShift itself. So since these are virtual machines have a rail, and then we can have that OpenShift installed on there. So my question is more about nesting of the Kubernetes environment, where they would have each team or each application development team get their own cluster.
Right. So, you know, typically if we talk about like segregation of resources between teams, right, OpenShift has that as like an inherent feature, right? But at the same time, if how that happens is using C groups and namespaces, right, which are the fundamentals of any Linux architecture. Okay, so extending that to an OpenShift platform, we are able to segregate those resources. Okay, when I say resources, your underlying compute power in the form of CPU, storage, etc., between teams. Okay, these are completely segregated, secluded. They have their own space on the underlying hardware. Okay, but why virtualization? Because there are still multiple applications. Okay, if we talk about persistent systems in the form of say databases, right, Oracle, go ask them, they'll say we run only on virtual machines, right, we run best on virtual machines. Okay, they came up with CVD or they are container databases. Okay, but even those are still running on virtual machines. Okay, so that's where I said in the beginning, virtual machines are not getting replaced very soon. Okay, eventually they might be. Okay, but virtualization is something that the industry still wants and would want in the coming years, right? So that's why virtualization, okay, and the technology that can get virtualization from that traditional stack onto a modern stack, where virtual machines as well as your containers run on the same platform. Okay,
Yeah.
now coming to your question of nested clusters, right, can I have like a OpenShift cluster on top of an underlying OpenShift cluster? Absolutely. Okay,
We have some customers where we have implemented that as well.
Yeah,
Right?
so I mean it's because the namespace isolation and the CS root doesn't give that all the capability, specifically from API server users perspective, and also from the accessing the other Kubernetes resources. Still you are within your namespace, but you have access to the other resources as well. So you need to have worried about perfect RBAC, and you need to maintain it. The network policies you need to have right in place, and you need to maintain it. But if you have a altogether different cluster, you don't need to have an overhead of maintaining it. So like for example, a finance department and there is a HR department, or maybe different marketing department, they wanted to have their own cluster, right? So in terms, but in the umbrella of the organization, everything runs on the OpenShift, and within that cluster we have a multiple cluster. But I understand that it would not be right to have a virtual machines capability inside the nested architecture, because nested virtual machine increases the complexity. I don't know what is your view on that.
Not really. As Rahul mentioned, right? So we have been giving like nested OpenShift solutions to our customers because they have requirements like these. Some that you correctly indicated, right? A finance department or one particular department or environment, running in an absolute segregated fashion, nothing shared. Okay, they would still want to be able to monitor, so they are admins being able to administer, manage their OpenShift cluster all by themselves. nothing getting shared with other teams. So there are such requirements. Okay. At the same time, when we look from an optimization perspective in the form of the underlying hardware, the investment that customers are required to do, okay, is where we are typically thinking about like nested architectures.
So OpenShift on OpenShift virtualization, right? For example, so that's already in implementation for some of the customers there, right? So nested virtualization is not possible, right? So if you say like on VMware, I create a OpenShift virtualization, that's not possible, right? You require the bare metal servers to do that, right?
So again, like, if you look at the industry, there are solutions like that, right? So, you can run your virtual box or even the VMware on top of like virtual machines, right? But do we really want that is the question, okay? OpenShift or Red Hat OpenShift virtualization is based on KVM, which is like a hardware-based hypervisor, okay? And that's the reason, we work with bare metals.
Then any further question?
Yeah, I have a question from ops perspective. So
Yeah.
in the typical like normal pods and containers OCP, we can easily drain the pods, drain the nodes and kill the nodes and whatever. So
Yeah.
how easy is it to do with this virtualization?
So there's a concept of live migration that I covered, right? So live migration so this is my unified platform, right? You see this side, this is a container, and these are the virtual machines running on my same project, right? That's a container, that's a VM, right? They're entirely different. Now, as you said, containers you can migrate, right? And similarly, VMs we can live migrate onto another node, right? So when you are patching the platform, right, doing some upgrade, right, this VM is running on one box, right? You want to patch that box, right? How will we do? We have to migrate, correct? So live migration is that feature. It will live migrate without any downtime to another node, run the patch, and then move it again, right? Was that your question?
I had
How
like
do we migrate?
if I just delete the node or do some kind of destructive actions, so does the scheduler takes care of the live migration?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
It will do that. Yeah. Question there?
So you talked about Oracle, that they want to run their databases on virtual machine. So I can understand some customers prefer virtual machines, but what is the industry trend in terms of virtual machines and containers? The reason why I'm asking is, I heard like virtual machines are very heavy, hardware dependent, containers are lightweight, and things like micro VMs were also coming into the picture. So
Correct.
just from that perspective, I want to know your view on where industry is going.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
we covered one of the slides at the starting. It will show you the trend that we talked about. Right? See the red part, that's the VMs that we had, right? Pretty prominent, correct? And then containers was starting, right? The containers is continue to rise, but VM still exists, right? It's not like you are just going away. You cannot, move everything into container, modernize everything on overnight, right? It takes time to do that, right? So for that reason, VM still exists, right? And that's where the OpenShift virtualization will help us to give us a unified platform to run both, right? Containers and VMs on the same platform, right? So, yeah. All right.
Yeah,
I think we are time. Yeah. You want to add anything?
I guess we are on time.
Yeah. Your time. All right. All right. Thank you. So we'll be